All right, so in this chapter, we're looking, this is the third video in chapter 4. We're looking at this really amazing molecule called ATP, which is the energy of the metabolic reactions. ATP is a really important molecule. So energy is really, in the basic decision, the ability to do work, the capacity to change something, or the ability to do work. The ability to do work has always been the core of that definition. Now, energy comes in different forms. We have heat, light, sound, electrical, mechanical, chemical. Our body generally uses chemical energy to move things to whatever, and we're going to look at this as the molecules ATP. But when we are moving something, using the chemical energy to try and provide mechanical energy, like a muscle contraction, what ends up happening is most of it gets released as heat. You're going to see that when we are moving energy, doing work, what's happened is we're transferring it. See, and this little part here, this is the foundation of physics, the first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can only be changed from one form to another. And so when I change chemical energy in order to do mechanical energy, like contracting a muscle, the majority of the heat is actually going to be transferred, or the majority of energy is going to be transferred as heat. So again, like it says here, most of our metabolic reactions use chemical energy as the main form. Now, many metabolic processes require chemical energy, which is stored in this ATP. Now, ATP, we're going to see this T stands for triphosphate, adenosine triphosphate. So it has 3 phosphates on it. It is that third phosphate bond that is a high energy chemical bond. And so ADP, here we'll look at it in just a second, diphosphate that only has 2 phosphates on it. It is a more stable molecule. So when we need energy, the way our body does it is it makes this bond called that third phosphate bond. And then when it breaks that, energy is released. And so we call that cellular respiration. And again, we're trying to produce this molecule of ATP. But remember, the majority of the energy gets released as heat, and that's why our body temperature is above normal temperature. I mean, most people's houses at least in the mid 70s, and most of us know that our body is 98.6, and it's because of all of this cellular and respiration going on that our body temperature rises or has stayed stable high above normal. Now, this, as I said, this adenosine triphosphate has these 3 phosphate chain, which is the main part, adenine and ribosome. And again, this is why, just to let you know, it's because of this backbone that we call this is a nucleic acid. Right? So nucleic acids are, again, DNA, RNA, and this is a form of nucleic acid. Now, this idea of going back and forth from diphosphate to triphosphate is, again, how the energy is made and moved. And it is called phosphorylation. Phosphorylation is simply the act of adding this third phosphate. And so this whole cycle back and forth is basically our reactor, our chemical reactor, our area of producing energy. And so there's this basic cycle. This is a high energy, very unstable molecule. It breaks down, energy is released, transferred. We lose a phosphate, we form ADP. We have some sort of process, type of enzyme or something that we're going to put this phosphate back on. This is going to go to where we need to go, and then it breaks down and the cycle repeats itself. So that's a little bit about ATP. Now, when I was kind of studying some of this stuff, I was trying to figure out the best way to present it when I first started teaching, and I heard a professor in California. His name is Professor Fink. He still has a pretty good page of really good lecture videos. They're a little older, but I think that they're awesome. I like his presentation style. But the way he described ATP is that he said if you go into a laundromat and you're trying to wash your clothes, if you've got a whole roll of $100 bills, it won't do you any good until you can break it down into quarters. The machines run on quarters. And the way he made the analogy is that the phosphate is the quarters of our body. And so, not to get into it, but our liver stores energy in a big molecule called glycogen. And he said that's kind of like a $100 bill. When we need to release energy into our body, if we're low on glucose, blood glucose level, our body will take that glycogen and break it down into, we'll say, $10 bills. That would be glucose. Once glucose gets in the cell, our body will start making change. It'll start breaking it down, and we can start releasing the energy stored up in that molecule, and we refer to that as ATP. And so hopefully that makes sense. But remember, ATP is the molecule that drives our body. It is the energy source that drives our body. And our body is designed to make this by breaking glucose down. We can break down lipids and proteins, but there's side products with it that are not as clean. It's not as clean burning as glucose. That's why when we studied the carbohydrates, and we said that it is our body's desired source of energy, main source of energy. So this is a little bit about ATP and the energy of metabolic reactions.